Take great care of yourself. Be balanced. Let your past be your past, but let your present be better and healthier. And really be mindful. What are you thinking? What's your why? And how are you taking care of you while you're taking care of the business?
Hey, everyone, it's Jamel Gibbs. Welcome to another podcast episode. This is the Business and Investing Podcast, where you learn all things business and investing related. Today, we're going to continue on a topic that we recently talked about with my good friend Ernest Dancy, who's currently in California, where we talked about the mind state of entrepreneurship. And we ended up digging a little bit into psychology behind entrepreneurship and how it really affects the individual, the ebbs and flows of how entrepreneurship works. And at the end of the day, I spoke a little bit about some of the things that I personally faced in entrepreneurship. If you haven't had a chance to check out that podcast episode on YouTube or on any other podcast platforms, be sure to check that out. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to go ahead and link it in the description box below, or you're going to be able to check it out in the cards up above as well. But today I'd like to talk to someone who's a psychologist, and she specializes in entrepreneurship as well. And I really want to talk about really some of the mindset shifts that people go through when it comes to maybe you're at a peak in your career, right? And you're not really enjoying that peak. You know, that happened to me 7-8 years ago. I was at a really high level. I was a high level real estate investor, but psychologically, I wasn't doing too well. I didn't feel like, I should be enjoying my success at that time. So I was, even though my income was high, I was feeling really low, and I don't know what was going on. So really, I went through a level of depression as an entrepreneur, and I didn't understand why. And that was for a short period of time, maybe 3 months or so. But I'm sure that if I went through that, there's other entrepreneurs that would go through that as well. So I really wanted to get somebody on and just open up the conversation a little further than what we did when we were talking with Ernest a few weeks ago on that podcast episode. So I got a psychologist on the line. She's actually Ernest's cousin. And she's a psychologist from our neighborhood, but she lives in Maryland now. And I wanted to introduce her, and we're going to talk to you guys about the psychology behind entrepreneurship today. Candice Dickens, how's everything?
Things are good. Things are good. I want to thank you for inviting me to be part of this discussion. And it's nice that my cousin began it with you, and I'm in the middle of the experience or the end of the experience, just talking about it more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, same neighborhood as you. Yep. I live in Windsor Mill, Maryland, and I have a private practice in Ellicott City, Maryland called CRA Counsel Consulting Agency. I do trainings for corporations and for individuals. I'm a speaker at national conferences. The upcoming one is Psychotherapy Networker. I do business coaching as well. And I'm currently back in school pursuing a PhD in counseling education. So things are good. Things are good.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So obviously, you became a psychologist. This is something that you wanted to do. How did you marry that with becoming an entrepreneur? Like, how did you make that happen?
It's funny. I remember being, I was going to go back to, I remember being pregnant. I was bedridden with twins. And I remember watching this show called Starting Over. And on the show, it was really about women coming into a house. I think Yolanda Van Zandt at one point was the host, and there was another woman. And they talked about starting over. And each woman had to start over with a business or an experience that reflected who they were. And I remember thinking while I was on bed rest, wow, when I get out this bed, I'm going to start over. And I'm going to use all of my experiences because I've always been a leader. I've been either director at 22, 23 at a community clinic, or I've been an administrative person, or I've always had tons and tons of clients. And it hit me, why don't I use my experiences to propel me forward, to really change not just my life, but my family's life. And so after I had the twins, I said, you know what, let me invest in me and create a business, because people are always calling me to do assessments, to do some speaking or helping with their businesses, organize it. If it's a mental health business. And it occurred to me, if I invested in me and I just took the lens and broadened it, then I can really make some really things happen in my life and my family's life. And that's when I started doing business. And I started a private practice, and then I expanded it, and a couple of years hired staff. And then I made it smaller so that it fit my life. But within making it smaller, I actually made the business bigger because I had different streams of income.
Right.
Because it hit me, I can make it bigger and I can work these hours, but then I lose out on my family. But if I decide to diversify and do different things, that really complemented my life. Because when I was growing up, I remember becoming a psychology student. My mother was like, "Oh, you're not going to make any money." There is money in mental health. There is money in mental health. And it occurred to me when I was watching that show, why don't I tap into what I know? And instead of making money for other people, why don't I make money for me? And we're looking at not just having one avenue, but just diversifying, so that even if I can't do counseling, I can do something else.
That leads me. Let me ask you this. So obviously, did you come from an entrepreneurial background?
I did. My mom and my youngest brother had a clothing store. Mm-hmm. I always knew the value of, being innovative, being a creative person, and Ernest's family has some real estate, and even Ernest, very entrepreneurial. There's always in us about talking about businesses. So that was always in us. And one of the things I've never been told is that what I can't do. So when I get an idea, I'll just go for it. Right. And I've never, and I think that's something that people who are successful, we all have. When we have an idea, it's like a compulsion. We do it until we do it, until we do it. And we're risk averse. We notice the risk, but the risk doesn't stop us from doing it. But we know we're about to lose. And then the saddest thing happens, it may have happened to you. When you get it, you climb that mountain, it's like, wow, this is a nice view, but there's nothing else for me to climb.
Right. Yeah, that definitely happened to me. So at that point, what type of mindset shift did it take for you to get above that hurdle?
It took for me to look at, there's nothing for me to do. So let me look at what else I'm interested in. Maybe it's not a matter of we create another mountain, but really expanding upon an interest. And really look at what are some other things that are of interest to me, because I've done this really, really well, right? What are some things that I can also cultivate and make into a business? Right. And I think that's what happens to people who are business people. We just don't think about one thing. We think about lots of things, because as that creative part of the brain that gets triggered with people who are entrepreneurs, we're always thinking about how we can make something better. Right. What an opportunity is for. And money doesn't always drive us. It's the opportunity that drives us. It's a possibility. And once you finish something, it's like, wow, I really enjoyed that. And the brain has to agree that thing is over, or that thing is completion. It's like parenthood. Mm-hmm. Once they're grown, it's like, wow, I really miss going to Little League. Well, I really miss being a mommy. Now they're grown and I can't do the same things. It's not the same kind of energy. And that's why sometimes we grieve or we get frustrated, especially when we know that it has more potential and we're not finished with it. But it might be finished. Yeah. So there's a whole psychological thing that happens with entrepreneurs. It doesn't happen with other people, where other people are just okay with this level. But entrepreneurs are always thinking about other levels.
And I was telling my wife that recently, probably within the last month or so. I said, entrepreneurs, we just think different than everybody else. We think on a different level. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, it takes for people to catch up to us, and by the time they catch up, we're probably 10 steps ahead. We're thinking 5-10 years out. We just don't think the same. And I think at that point, it can cause a level of depression, at some point, right? Because, there aren't a lot of people, most people are brought up to, or trained to work for someone else. An entrepreneur doesn't think that way. So what are some of the obstacles that an entrepreneur would face, whether you're in real estate or any other type of business, the way you think?
Yeah, it's the way being so far ahead sometimes creates space between you and the people who are connected with you. So it creates disconnection and can create loneliness. And in that space, it also can create some resentment for other people because you're not as available and you're so far ahead that it makes them risk averse. If they want to be safe and you want to explore the possibilities because you can see the payoff, right? But there's a price they got to pay that you have to pay and they have to pay to pursue this dream. And in that space, when people are pulling away, you're moving forward, and that could be a very lonely experience. And if it goes well, it can be sometimes hurts the relationship because they might be very envious that you've done all this stuff, right? That you've acquired all this stuff. And for some people, not only is that envy, but some people feel entitled. Like, okay, well, you're ahead. I was with you. I struggled with you. And now they want to reap the benefits of it. And for some entrepreneurs, they're like, wow, I don't remember you being side by side with me. I remember you being behind me. I remember you helping me, but I don't remember you having ownership of the dream I had. Right. So it's a whole experience for an entrepreneur psychologically.
Right. So what do you think causes, and I'm not saying this happens with every single entrepreneur, but what do you think causes that depression? I mean, obviously some of what you just mentioned would do it. Yeah. But what do you think the main culprit is that causes that the depression in entrepreneurs when they reach a certain pinnacle of their success, or if they're not achieving? I mean, obviously, if they're not achieving what they really wanted, then that's kind of obvious. Okay, I'm going to be depressed because of that. But why, when you reach a certain pinnacle of success, are you still struggling with a certain level of depression? Yeah. And it's not everybody, but it could be.
No, that's not everybody. But those who do reach it, is like, I forgot who said it, who said the worst thing you can do is get the NBA ring. He said, because once you have it, you grieve about getting it again. Or now that you've had it, where do you go? Once you're number one, where do you go after that? Right? It's like, I've done this. Now what? I spent my whole life focusing on this one dream. And now that it's here, and there's never been another dream that was just this. And that you like the things that come with this, but it doesn't give you the same kind of excitement, because part of the experience of being the entrepreneur is the excitement.
Right.
It's the negotiation, it's the planning, it's the creation, it's all that stuff. And then once it's finished and you're extremely young, it's hard. It's like, wow, what's next? What's my part two? And this is the only thing I've thought about. And you can expand, but it's going to be a different journey work than that first journey. That's the first love. It's like being in love. It's the first love.
Right.
Right. And there may not be another love that feels the same way. You can have other businesses, but it's not like that first love. When you were grinding and you were hungry for it and you had to sell yourself. Because after a while, now it's a machine and it runs itself. And you've got to figure out where you're at in that machine. And sometimes it's saddening, because then you're just the owner of it. And you might get disconnected from the grassroots parts of it. Right. So sometimes it brings that sadness, because you got to figure out what your role is and what your journey like is. What's the purpose of my life now? Right. Because sometimes that one thing is all you dreamt about.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you spoke about, you just said we're not always driven by money. But at some point, I think burnout can cause a level of depression, right? I've been burned out multiple times in my business, right? Yeah. And then, like you said it earlier today, just being, at the top of your success, and you feel like you're lonely at the top. And I think some of that can be, you can avoid some of that just by bringing other people up. And that's kind of why I got into, coaching real estate, right? Because I feel like if I can train someone else to basically copy exactly what I was able to do within a shorter period of time, I can live vicariously through them without having to do all the work. They're basically, they're doing the work. And it brings us, if you guys are watching this podcast, you probably heard this before, where a real estate coach or someone that's a mentor or something, of that caliber, they feel a certain level of joy when they're able to show somebody else exactly how to do
exciting.
What they did. It's exciting it's probably more exciting to your coach than it is to you.
Because you're reliving it.
You're reliving, exactly.
You're reliving it. And you're tapping into the best parts, the parts that are exciting. Like just like with politicians, when they're selling themselves, they talk about their experiences, how they got there, how it was poor and how struggled. They're reliving it because those are the best parts. They don't talk about the millions they have now. They talk about the struggle because it's exciting. Right. But here's the other part. There are some people who are very successful and they were so driven by that thing. But they didn't deal with the other stuff that was happening along the way. the death of so-and-so, the losses, the conflicts, the divorces. And when they get to that success, all that stuff catches up to them. All the stuff they didn't deal with, or while they were pursuing this thing, the things they didn't have time to deal with, all the relationships that got lost along the way or got wounded along the way, because there's a certain level of isolation that happens with entrepreneurs. You have to do that journey alone, some parts of it. Even if it's a family business, there's a part where the family steps back and the leader has to step forward, and you take most of those hits. And it creates that experience, that duality, that dichotomy where we're close, but we're not close. We're going through this together, but we're not going through this together.
Right.
Right.
So what you're saying is, and I can verify this because I know exactly where you're getting at with this. So what basically what you're saying is there's a certain point in your business where you're going to have to, it's going to be lonely, right?
Going to be lonely.
In my business, I was lonely, and I think that's what caused the depression. I would literally be in a room by myself for months, right? And this was all day, every day for a certain amount of time. And that ultimately led to me going to, I felt down and out for probably 3 months, I want to say.
And that's grief, right? Part of loneliness is that we grieve the connection. And sometimes we don't look at that and we don't talk about it as entrepreneurs. I'm just on my grind, but it's a very lonely experience.
Right.
Not that people don't love you, don't want to be connected, but they can't do what you do.
So ultimately life gets in a way.
Absolutely. But there's some grief.
So even while you're working towards the success, life is happening, but you're not addressing these issues. Right. Right. Because
there's times cognitive, you're still focused and you're not available. You can't be available all places.
Right.
You could be a little bit available, but you can't be fully available because this thing that you're chasing requires a lot of your attention and a lot of your emotional experience, right? Your cognitive, physically, it gets everything. And someone's going to get short something.
So basically what you're saying is all of that stuff, if you don't address it as it happens, is even when you hit the level of success that you, it's going to catch up. So
it always catches up.
So that leaves me a question. Should you address it as it happens, or is it better to?
You have to acknowledge it as it's happening. Like when I have couples who have a business and they'll say, we're arguing at the breakfast table, or we're arguing with the kids because somehow the business has eclipsed the marriage. Right. Wow. And you've got to acknowledge that it's eclipsed the marriage. And now all you're talking about is business and kids and business and kids. And then we're talking about more business than we're talking about the kids.
Right.
Because it's the thing that drives you. It's like a compulsion thing. It's the thing that gets our minds and we think about it constantly. And it gets wrapped into our identity. This is who you are. Right. And when it's great, it's great. But when it's not, it does something to us psychologically, emotionally.
And that happened to me as well. So I found myself, and I'm only using myself as an example because I'm sure people they can relate to this as well, especially those of you who are building your business right now. I found myself at dinner with my wife looking on my cell phone to see what deals came in, or talking about literally doing business while we were. Our whole conversation at dinner would be about something related to the business, and that you gotta know how to let go and just have time spent outside of business, basically detox from business to be able to operate healthy, in a healthy way.
But that goes what you said is that it could be a very isolative experience. And sometimes people don't realize that's the only time they get to talk about it. Like you're doing it all day and then you got to process it. So I'm coming home to process it. And she's like, I haven't seen you in 10 hours and you're talking about business. But I'm uploading. Just like if she came home from being a nurse or from being a secretary or a doctor, she's going to come on and talk about work because she had to clean it off. Processing helps you clean it off. Right. But what happens is that it creates this disconnection where all we talk about is the processing. And then we forget to do the intimacy. So people who do business, sometimes we try to be intimate, but we're so focused and driven. And a lot of times we do it for the family or we do it for the generational experience, like generational wealth.
Right.
That we forget, wow, I got to do self-care and I've got to really check where I'm at.
You got to love yourself, right? You gotta show yourself. You gotta show yourself some love. So let's provide our listeners with, let's say, a 3 to 5 step process on how they can remain mentally strong or become mentally strong, or psychologically strong while they're doing business, while they're building their business, because it can be draining. There are ebbs and flows, ups and downs in the business.
Absolutely.
How can they become or remain, like, what are some things that they can do in order to live a healthy lifestyle while building a business?
Right. One is practice self-care, because sometimes we don't practice self-care because the business needs so much. I know when I became a clinic, I was working 7 days a week because I had staff on top of me. And if clients didn't come in, I still had to pay these people. And when you're working 7 days, 8 to 6, I got sacrificed for the sake of the business, to grow the business. So part of it is recognizing when you're sacrificing too much, and have someone who's an accountability person saying, hey, you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well. All you do is go to work, but there's nothing else in your life. There's no balance. There's no church. There's no working out. Or when we speak, you're processing so much, because it really talks about level of burnout, right? And you're consumed by it. And in order to be successful, there has to be some obsessiveness, right? But we're recognizing there has to be something else in addition to this obsession. And if you have children, it's like, are you taking breaks with them? Then if you're not, you got to look at why you're not. If all you're talking about is business, then you're not giving yourself enough cognitive breaks, right? Because then you get tied in with it, and a business will drag you emotionally. So when it goes up, I'm happy. It's like an addiction. When you crash, you're in hell. You're depressed. You're agitated, right? And we'll say, wow, look at the relationship, because it might be a relationship that fluctuates in an unhealthy way. Because even if the business doesn't do well, you should do well emotionally. You should still be okay. And if the business folds, we're looking at, who do I think I am? Without this business, who am I? If I'm doing self-care, who do you think you are without this business? What's driving you? What's your why? Right? What do your relationships look like? There should be people who are, that even when you're consumed, they're supportive of you. They're trying to take care of you. They may not be where you're at, but they really are your anchors. They're really invested in you doing well, right? The fourth is giving yourself permission to be human, that there are limits to you, right? And recognizing we can't do all things, because people who do business, they're always thinking about business, right? They're limitless, they're boundless, that there's really no end. Because I know people have 6 businesses and they run those 6 businesses. And then I think about another business, like, wow, if you do another business, your family will never see you.
Yep.
Right. And they're like, that's okay. You haven't checked in to see where your family's at with you not being available. Because people like your money, but they love you more. Right? People always like your money, but they love you more.
You know, I literally just had this conversation. You know, I heard somebody say, if you had to look at all of the money that you can make versus the time you can provide for your wife and kids, what do you think they're going to pick? Are they going to pick the money, or are they going to pick the time? Right. And chances are they're going to pick the time. They don't care about the money. You know, whether, obviously money plays a major role in you being able to provide financially, but the time is what's more important than the money. That's why you have some people who make a whole lot of money, but they don't have the family. But then you have people who don't have a lot, but they're the happiest people in the world because they have family. Right. So it's all perspective at that point.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
All,
and I'm in the business of helping. So I've never seen one come to therapy because they had too much money. I've seen people come to therapy because they didn't know who was their friends because they had too much money. But usually when people come to therapy because I didn't get enough something. And oftentimes it's connection and time. And what we said about being an entrepreneur, it can be a very disconnected, lonely experience, where after a while, I'm just more connected to the high and the power and the privilege that comes with having a business than the people who are connected to the business. Right? And sometimes that creates the grief, because I got here and there's no one here to share with me. And after a while, we learn how to be transaction, where I'm giving people stuff and not giving them me.
That's powerful. That's powerful stuff right there. So the more you improve as a person, the better you can become as a business owner. And then at the same time, the stronger your relationships can be. It's all about having balance at the end of the day. Yeah. Right?
Having a balance and having a plan. Like a lot of us have business plans, but we don't have a life plan. Like I know your business plan is to make this kind of money at the end of the year. So tell me about the life plan. How would you want to feel while you're making this kind of money at the end of the year? What's the plan for you psychologically? So that when you get stressed, what's your go-to? You're going to therapy, you're talking to someone, you're exercising, you're praying. What's the life plan? How you make sure that these connections are good connections and that you're also not being violated by people? What does that mean? sometimes when we have transactional relationships, people trying to take advantage of the money. And we'll say, make sure that you're having intimate relationships where people know what the expectations are with you, that you're not the money dad, you're the person.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes entrepreneurs stop being people and we be opportunities for people where they want advice or they want mentorship or they want money or they want to help. And they forget that this would have a relationship with us, not just transaction with us. And sometimes that's part of the grief, that people stop seeing you. Right. So if you're having dinner with people and no one's pulling out money for the check and they know you got it, that feels like a transactional relationship. And sometimes for people, it feels like that lonely feeling comes back. Like, wow, I miss the days when we all put money out. Mm-hmm. We all put it on our cards. Right. I miss the intimacy. I miss the connection when people just saw me, just didn't see what I have.
Powerful stuff. So a couple of things that I've recently taken on is just understanding 4 pillars in my life. So I have a spiritual, I have a family, I have my health and fitness, and I have my financial life. So those are my 4 pillars. And I just try to keep balance between all of that, right? And I've even brought it over into my business where I recently coined myself as a family-oriented entrepreneur, because I want to teach people that you can become successful in your business while still providing and giving your family the time that they need, still being able to take care of your health, still being able to take care of your spirituality and do what you got to do and really have balance, but still be ultra, super successful in your business. And to me, success is nothing if you don't have all of the other things going on. The finances part is the least, it should be the least of your worries, at the end of the day, because it is, at least in my situation, right? But when you have balance, this is where you can avoid the depression part. This is where you can avoid going a little crazy. Yes, I am obsessive in my business. I do work a lot because I love what I do. And I have a lot of people to help. We have 16 at the time of this recording. We have a little over 16,000 people on my YouTube page, right? But I have 175,000 email subscribers at the time of this recording, right? The whole point is I have a lot of people to help. So I can be a little obsessive, but I also got to know at nighttime from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning, my phone is off, right? That time is for my family and time for rest, right? I know that in the morning, between 9 and 11, I'm working out. You can't contact me, right? So I have my set times. And before I got organized in this way, I felt sporadic. I was all over the place, right? So just being organized, knowing what the goal is, like you said.
Right. What's the why? What's the goal?
Right.
And looking, and I like what you said is that, because I know I say it to a lot of people, what does your spirituality look like? What does your eating look like? What does your sleeping look like? What does your friendships look like? Because those are important. What does wellness look like? Because sometimes all we have is a plan of how I want this deal to happen. And we never look at how do I take care of me while I'm taking care of this plan? Right. And what am I not willing to give up while I'm taking care of this plan? Because there has to be something that's a non-negotiable. And for some people, it's I'll pay anything to be successful. You don't want to pay anything to be successful.
No.
Because when you're there, you won't have anything.
That's right.
And success is a cold dish when you're by yourself to eat it. It's very lonely. So I've seen so many people who've become very successful who then sabotage themselves. Right?
That's right.
And they destroy what they have because it doesn't have value anymore. It doesn't have meaning.
That's right. So Candice, how can our listeners get in contact with you if they wanted to have a conversation maybe, or get more information on what it is that you do?
2 things in the spirit of self-care, because I am doing a lot. I'm not taking new clients for 2 years.
That's a good problem to have.
It is. And to all the listeners, and I remember about maybe 10 years ago, I remember going to a business coach and saying, my business is running my life. Because I had a waiting list of 20 people. I was seeing 50 people a week. They're only 40 hours in a week, but I was doing double. And I remember thinking it was running my life. And then it hit me. The moment you make yourself the priority, the business will still grow. You'll just grow differently with the business.
Yep.
Right. And I always say to people, never be afraid to say no. Because what you'll find, because I haven't taken new people in about a year, and I'm still full. And I still have a waiting list. And I get to play golf and spend time with family and my friends and my kids.
Balance.
That Yeah, but it's that balance, right? Which is why I love golf and I love working out 3 times a week with my trainer. It's that balance, because if I'm healthy, the business is healthier, right? But they can reach me. I do have a YouTube channel, Candid on Life Matters. They can reach me in there. They can always email me at CRA Counsel Consulting Agency, and my website is CandiceRDickens.com. So they
Sounds
can
good.
welcome to the message.
Make sure you check Candice out. I'm gonna make sure I link all of that in the description box, especially the YouTube.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you guys go ahead and check out her page. A lot of value you're gonna get from that page, and make sure you reach out to her if you need to have a conversation. But at the end of the day, just remember, the psychology behind what you're doing, why you're doing it. Like Candice said, have the reason why set. You're gonna have blinders on, but also have balance. And
Absolutely.
and the reason I say that is because I lived that part of my life throughout my 20s and some of my 30s, even where, I had blinders on to the point where I was avoiding everything else. And even though I was super successful, my wife was really supportive. I felt like I wasn't providing my wife with that time, my kids with that time. I felt like I missed out on stuff, even though I didn't, because I work from home and my wife is a stay-at-home mom. Right. My kids are homeschooled. We're always together, but I'm sitting here in this office right now. I'm isolated from my family. Right. And even if you're not necessarily isolated, if you're not taking the time to go out and see your family, take a break. Right. If your head is down all the time, you could feel like you're incarcerated at some point, like you're in a hole and you can't get out. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So you definitely want to take the time and understand that balance is what's going to help you to get from where you are right now to where you want to go. So make sure you check out Candice's YouTube page. The link will be in the description box below, and check out her website and everything else that she has going on as well.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
And as part of psychological help, upgrade your thinking, because I know so many people who, when we get there, we still live like we're not there. And we're still chasing like we're not there. So if you have a background with, you had some financial struggles growing up, and then you get there, sometimes our mind has not shifted to the fact that, wow, I can really enjoy life. You sure can. Yeah. You've earned it, right? You've earned it, and you're in a different place, so the pace can be different.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I struggle with that too. It's like you're talking to me in this whole podcast. Where we grew up. I grew up in Red Hook Projects, and for a long time I was making a whole lot of money, but I wasn't living like it. I drove that same 93 Toyota Camry well past the time I made my first $1 million in real estate. I had a cracked windshield, everything, but I wasn't living like I had the money. It was because I felt like it can be taken away from me.
There's that fear, and that's psychological.
There's a fear,
and that's trauma, because poverty is trauma. It's traumatizing, and there's always that fear it's going to be taken away. And I just said to someone else today, I said, but there's so much evidence that it can't be taken away so easily. But trauma, you never forget. It's on 9/11. You don't forget it, but you can't live out of it. Now, you can't see yourself.
On the flip side of that, when I did start to let go a little bit, I made poor money choices. Again, not being financially educated. Yeah. And I basically went bankrupt and had to rebuild all over again. So that kind of confirmed that fear a little bit, but it also helped me to break through the fear when I got the money back, because I said, okay, I lost it, but I got it back. So it's not really as bad as it, not really as bad as it, as they say it is, what I mean? So what are some books that our listeners can read, in regards to changing their mindset to help them along their journey?
I like this book. Says it's called The Panic Power. Another book is called Gremlin. There's another book called You Are Not What You Think. Those are really good books that talk about how sometimes we worry, but it really is about, like, I love what you said, is that trauma piece is big. And I always say to people, read a book about trauma, because trauma creates memories. And sometimes we live out that memory, and that's what drives the dream. Like, I don't want to be broke again. And then we don't realize that, wait a minute, that fear, that experience happened to us when we were 14 or 19, and now we're 30. And we don't realize that we will never be that vulnerable, that small, that powerless.
Mhm.
And the best thing that happens for us is us to fail and then get up and go, wow, it didn't happen
Yep.
the way I thought it was. No, it didn't. And it didn't last as long as I thought it would last. I thought I'd be broke forever. No, you weren't. So now you get to see that is just a memory. That's not your current experience. Because
That's
now
right.
you're different. You have more resources.
That's right. So if you had to provide our listeners with some last words of advice, what would those words be?
Take great care of yourself. Be balanced. Let your past be your past, but let your present be better and healthier, right? And really be mindful. What are you thinking? What's your why? And how are you taking care of you while you're taking care of the business?
I love that. How are you taking care of you while you're taking care of the business?
You're taking care of the business.
Love that. Love
That's
that.
important.
Good stuff. I really think we did a really good job touching on psychology and business today. I would love to have you back in the future.
Oh,
You
yes.
guys want to see Candice back? Do me a favor, leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know what questions you would ask Candice on our next podcast episode. And also, while you're at it, be sure to share this video with some people who maybe, well, if you know someone that's an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't know what people are really going through. Maybe you should share this video with them just for confirmation purposes, right? Maybe they need to hear something like this in regards to their businesses. Maybe they have the blinders on and you don't realize what they're actually going through behind the scenes. Or you see that they have the blinders on and you notice that they're so focused on their business that they're not focused on anything else. Share this video with them. In addition to that, help the YouTube algorithm for me by liking this video. Subscribe to this channel for more information just like that. If you're listening to this on a podcast, again, be sure to continue supporting this podcast across all podcast platforms. We really appreciate the growth from all these different countries that are listening to this podcast now. And looking forward to continue providing you with the information that you need to go from where you are to where you want to go in your real estate or your business in general. And I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Take care.